Hello, let's do a little poetry analysis from your very sleepy, tired English teacher. So, I'm going to look at the poem One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. So, as you can tell, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas here. So when we're talking about something that has very clear stanzas that match the same form, you might think that we are dealing with a specific type of poetry here. And in fact, that's because this is a villanelle. So this is a villanelle. Let me type it. The thing that makes it a villanelle is because it actually conforms to the strict structure, well, or not so strict in this case, of 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines, and then you have this final stanza where both of the repeated lines appear as the final sort of couplet. So keep in mind that this is a poem in form, and I'm going to go through and read it one time. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seemed filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch. And look, my last or next to last of 3 love houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. So if we're looking here, we know that we have a clear rhyme scheme. So we have master being the A rhyme, intent, we have a B rhyme, disaster is another A rhyme. Fluster in this case is a slant A rhyme. Spent and intent, so we have a B rhyme. And then we have master again. Notice that this line is actually identical to the first line, except for punctuation is different. Then we have faster, which is an A rhyme. Meant is a B rhyme, and disaster again. You'll see, however, that here she's deviating from the villanelle because this is not a clear mirror of that first final line in stanza 1. Now, this is where the rhyme scheme starts to really fall apart. So we went from master, disaster, fluster, slant, master, faster, disaster, last, or. So this is another slant A rhyme, a real stretch. Went is a B rhyme, and then we've got master again. Notice same exact line repetition. Then we have vaster. Continent went, it's the ending, but it's a rhyme. And then we have disaster. Again, notice that this line is not a perfect copy of the others. So then we have gesture, which is a really stretch A rhyme. Evident, continent, it's a close B rhyme. And then the art of losing is not too hard to master. We have the first change to this line. We have not too hard versus isn't hard. So we have a change in that similar line from isn't hard, which is now not too hard. So we're seeing a slight change in the focus of that line. And then we have this last repeating line again. We have this last repeating line again. So here's our A, and then here's our other A. So you have that final couplet with the two. It's not really a couplet, it's in the last stanza, but that final pairing of the two repeated lines. So interesting to note is that in this last paragraph is the first place that you get these parentheticals. So in the last paragraph, you get here and here, parentheticals. Who is the author talking to? Are they talking to themselves? Are they reassuring themselves of something? Are they talking to us? Perhaps in the first parenthetical, but the second one seems awfully like the author is talking to themselves or the speaker is talking to themselves. But because of this, write it. It's almost as if you can, in this case, mash the speaker in the poem and the author together. Because here, the person writing is being commanded to write it. So it's as if the speaker and the author are one and the same. So if that's true, if this is true, is that this is the speaker and author are the same. What we might want to focus on then is what exactly is going on with this art, okay? When she says one art, does she mean that one art, as in this is the only art? Does she mean one art like this is a style of art, like this is one of many, a style, one of many? Does she mean, when she says one art, does she mean that the thing that makes it art is the losing? Is that what she's saying? Is she saying that the art of losing is this the only art? Is the art of losing? Or is the art of losing that one art that she has mastered? Is that what she's trying to tell us? What is she saying actually here? What is she trying to tell us about this art? Okay. So she starts with, the art of losing isn't hard to master. Okay. Master. It isn't hard to master. Does she mean master as in conquer? Conquer? Does she mean master as in becoming expert? Like, does she mean like you can overcome the art of losing, you can conquer it, you can master it? Or does she mean it isn't hard to master, you can become an expert at it? So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost. What? The intent to be lost. What things? What things want to be lost? Or have an intention of loss? What can you get? What things can you have that you know that their loss is intended to happen? And that because they're fulfilling their intent, it's no disaster. It's not a disaster. Okay. So if we're thinking about this first line, the art of losing isn't hard to master. Okay, well, how does she tell us that maybe we should master it? Lose something every day. So this might imply that that first reading was correct. So the art of losing equals becoming an expert in it, because you can become an expert if you lose something every day. Hence, like the practice makes perfect sort of thing. Practice, lose something every day. Accept the fluster of lost door keys, right? You just Lose your keys, you know, whatever. And then get over that fluster that you have. Accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. Right? This is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. Losing your keys. How long does it take you to find them? Forever. C, the art of losing isn't hard to master. So now we can even think tone. Okay, so what's happening here? In the first one, she seems to be giving us more of the roadmap of where she's going to go with this poem. But by the second stanza, it almost seems nonchalant or even aloof, maybe casual. C, it's not that hard, right? See, it's not that hard. Okay. So then where does she go next? Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Practice losing farther, losing faster. How can you lose far or lose fast? Losing fast seems to be easily understood. I mean, you could lose a game fast or something. You could lose your keys fast. So that I understand that. How can you lose far? How can you lose far? Here it seems to be that she means this farness, this thing far away. It doesn't mean you are displacing something by distance, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I left my keys in the other state. Like literally they're far away. Or does it mean that the reach of your loss is expanding? You're losing more and more. It's breaching past those little things that you can get used to, like losing your keys. It's going more than that. It's expanding. And then not only those, but you're losing places, you're losing names, right? What does it mean to lose a place? Is it to forget it? Are you forgetting it? Think about the same with a name. How do you lose a place? You can't lose a place. They don't disappear. They don't leave the map, right? You might forget a name. You might not remember someone's name, but they're listed together as if they're the same thing. So here, it can't necessarily be forget. It has to be this. You're losing things more and more beyond as you're getting more lost. It's expanding beyond you. And where it was meant, where it was you meant to travel. So this is even thinking future. You're having to get used to losing things that haven't even happened yet. But none of these will bring disaster. Notice the difference. First off, it's no disaster. Now it's, well, none of these will bring disaster. So it's almost as if in the first part, disaster is not an option. It's not even present. But then it's sort of backing up. Well, none of these will bring total disaster. You won't totally crumble and fall apart, but it's not as lenient as that first stanza. But then this, I lost my mother's watch. This is the first place we get I. We have you, but now we have I. You could think maybe this first part is more broad, thinking about what all of us understand, right? Losing and loss and getting used to it. And we get used to and we get this bad practice, right? We don't want it, but we get this practice of losing more and more and further and further. And what if in the act of actually writing this out, Bishop is actually thinking now more about herself. So it's almost like the poem is sort of collapsing. I lost my mother's watch. How? How? Did she lose it, like gave it away? Someone stole it? She forgot it somewhere? You know, how did she lose it, right? We've talked about these other kinds of loss, maybe forgetfulness, misplacement, you know, the feeling of being left out or not being able to do the things you want. So what's going on with this? What's going on with that watch? And look, we have now sort of an interjection. And look, who is she talking to? Is she talking to us? It doesn't seem like it, right? Because how could we look at what she's looking at? She must be talking to herself or to a specific person who can actually see. How could we look beyond what's actually here in this poem? My last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. Okay. She's had to move, or has she actually lost these houses? Like they've burnt up in a fire or something like that has happened. She's been evicted, like she's physically been removed from them, or she just had to move. Interesting that it says my last or next to last, right? There's different ways you can think of last. Last is like previous, like the one you had before, but last could also be final. This is my last house. I've lost so many things already that this might be my last thing I ever lose. This might be the end for me, right? Kind of a little dark, but it's possible. That might be where she's going here. Or next to last, right? Maybe she's giving herself a little bit of breathing room. Maybe this is not the last one. There's one more, maybe. Of 3 loved houses. I wonder if there's any significant of 3. But I think that and maybe others feel this too, you do have certain houses that you do love, maybe places you don't love, but you live. But there are loved houses too. And in fact, she doesn't actually say that she lived in them. She just says, there they went. So, you know, these could belong to other people that she's loved. And instead of actually saying she's lost the person, she could just be telling us she lost the house. The art of losing isn't hard to master. It seems less convincing now. It seems less convincing now. The bigger her loss is, the less this repeated line feels like the truth. When your losses get bigger and bigger, you don't feel like it gets easier. You don't feel like you're mastering it. You don't feel like you're conquering it or you're becoming an expert. This line almost feels like she's trying to convince herself. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones. She lost 2 cities. Now, if you think back to what I said about the houses, you know, you can't lose a city. They don't go away. Did she have to move? Again, here's that lovely, loved. Did she move from them? Did she have to leave them? Were her loved ones there and now she can't be there? She lost them, though. She lost them. Certainly, you can understand losing a watch. How can you lose a city? And vaster, some realms I owned. Does she mean literally? Like places she literally owned, like her own real estate? Or does she mean realms I owned, like just belonged to her, right? What does she mean here? 2 rivers, a continent. Okay, surely she couldn't have owned the rivers in a continent, but because of these commas right here, she could just be using a list of things she lost. So this could be read as she lost realms that she owned, also rivers, also continents. Or it could be read as realms she owned, rivers, and continent. I don't know. Could be either way. I mean, in that case, it's probably not literal belonging. It's probably that she felt like there was a connection to those places. So see, the loss is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Just the keys. Then places and names, places she wanted to travel. Then her mother's watch. Then her houses. Then cities. Then realms, rivers, continents. She's losing everything. And she says, I miss them. I miss them. But it wasn't a disaster, which could be read two ways. Either she means it is a disaster, or she means this isn't the disaster yet. So you could read it as, I miss them. All these things I've lost, I miss them. But it wasn't a disaster, like it is a disaster. Or she means, I've lost all of these things. I've lost all of them. But those aren't the things that were a disaster. It wasn't a disaster, leading us to believe that the next thing that's coming is the disaster. Now we get an interesting use of punctuation. We get an em dash, hyphen, whatever you want to call it. Like this is almost like an aside. Like this is an added note, perhaps. Like she's making this as a last little note, almost like a postscript. Even losing you. Even losing you. Even losing you. Notice that this you up here is impersonal. She's talking about you, just you in general. But this you is a specific person. This you is a specific person. And this you is probably not the audience. She's talking to someone. And then she gives us that parenthetical. The joking voice, a gesture I love. She says that you has some voice, has jokes, the gestures, right? She didn't forget those. She didn't lose those, right? She still remembers them. They're written right here. They're not lost yet. They're not forgotten yet. I shan't have lied. I shan't have lied. Okay. About what? We don't know. We don't know. We really don't. We don't know. I shan't have lied. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love. I shan't have lied. Does she mean, when she says, I shan't have lied, does she mean I shouldn't have lied to you? Or does she mean I shouldn't have lied with this poem? The art of losing is very hard to master, no matter what I've said, right? I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing is not too hard to master. You know, it's evident, right? She says it's evident. It should be so clear to you now after reading this poem. Don't you think? Don't you see? It's so clear. I've mastered it, right? I am totally fine with it. I totally don't need to write a poem about it. I'm totally fine with my loss. Now we are sort of, that through line seems to be falling apart. It's evident the art of losing is not too hard to master. It's not evident to me. It seems here like losing is the hardest thing that she's ever done. And it really is an art, not a science. It's not perfect. It's something that you can't master it. It's not a science. It's not a science. It's an art. It's evolving. It changes with time and context. Losing always feels like you can't grasp it. And then she gets this final line. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like disaster. And the parenthetical, write it. This seems like author to herself. Think of it as she's writing. It's evident the art of losing is not too hard to master. Though it may look like, write it, like disaster. That doubling, that duplicate like, tells us that this is a true intrusion into the writer's thought because there's a repetition in the actual sentence itself. This is an actual break with the thought, though it may look like, and then it's like she can't get to that final line. Write it, say it, like disaster. So when she tells us this, it may look like disaster, but it's not. I mean, you as the audience member are thinking this is a disaster. Sure. If you have to tell yourself to write it, you can't even get through it. It certainly is a disaster. So if you have to think now what actually this poem is trying to tell us, you might want to think about tone. So what's going on in her tone? She seems so straightforward in the beginning, right? She seems like it's going to be preachy. It sounds like it's going to tell you what to do to make your life better. But by the end, it's a caved, it's caving, it's raw. You can feel that it's almost like a tremble, right? She's trembling. She has to force herself to write. Okay, so what is she actually trying to say? I mean, she's trying to say that the art of losing is a disaster. I mean, it is. I mean, it feels like we always lose, right? We always lose stuff. But you can always lose more. And you'll have no idea how it affects you. Maybe this is affects, right? I mean, it is a disaster. It is a disaster. No matter how much people try and tell you that you can master the art of losing, it will be a disaster. You will lose things and it will make a mess of you. And you can lose things big and small, and they might not bring disaster, but it will look like it, right? You might want to, I mean, obviously we've got a really structure. This is a Villanelle with some slant rhymes. So she's not 100% conforming to that structure. And also we have some interesting style choices, especially in that last paragraph, the M dash, the parentheticals, parentheticals. And the exclamation in the middle, the look. Also, you might want to talk about the double meanings, right? What is an art? What does it mean to master? What's a disaster? And then even how the recurring lines feel different each time. Okay, so that was one art. Hopefully you liked it or didn't like it. It's pretty sad, but maybe it will help. Bye-bye.